Welcome to the Nashville Current podcast. I'm your host, Ed Clay, and today we have a very special guest, Tomi Lahren. Tomi, how you doing?
Doing well. Just enjoying living the dream in Nashville. Fled California. Now I'm here, triggering the liberals in Nashville, just from one liberal enclave to the next.
Talk about that. I mean, yeah, in many ways, you can trigger the left. And what's that like? You're 27 years old? Mm-hmm. And what's that like, having people attack you all the time? Pretty much since, when did you start? When you were about 21?
21, yeah. No, I mean, it's been pretty consistent since then. It doesn't bother me, quite honestly. If I'm saying something that has facts behind it, or it's a well-founded opinion that I'm expressing, and people have a reaction to it and they don't like it, that to me is okay. I think that that's where dialogue and conversations happen. If we're all agreeing, then there's something wrong. And if everybody likes me, then I'm not doing my job correctly because I'm not questioning the status quo. I'm not questioning our leaders. I'm not questioning my peers. I question conservatives maybe as much as I question liberals. So for me, that's just the values of an independent thinker. And I'm happy to be whatever they want me to be, whatever target they want to make me. If I'm speaking the truth and I'm speaking what I really feel, is what it is.
Yeah, free thinking, we were just talking about this the other day. Free thinking is almost like taboo. To me, everything is so polarizing. You have the right and the left, and you can have different ideas. We were talking about the mask thing earlier. Like, I have a pretty unique perspective when it comes to masks. But that doesn't seem like you can really think freely in the middle without getting put in a box.
Exactly. They want you to be on one side or the other, and I've never been that person. I mean, people that know my story know very well that I was fired from a network for expressing a belief that wasn't necessarily token conservative. And I was willing to take that hit and fight for it, and I fight for my conservative values, but I think we all exist on a spectrum, and people don't like it when you can't be put into a little nice box. They don't like it when you don't look the way you're supposed to look or sound the way you're supposed to sound, and they don't like it when they don't know where you're going. They like to be able to just put you neatly in one side or the other. That's not how we are. But speaking about people not being free thinkers anymore, the thing that's bothering me the most during this time of coronavirus is that there are so many people who look to the government as their Lord and Messiah, and they forget to question anything. And whatever the government tells them to do, they will jump on board for. Yeah. And if history tells us anything, is that can have really disastrous consequences. Yeah,
well, I mean, democide, if you Google democide and see what that's like throughout the world history, that's obviously the biggest concern in the end. Not saying it's going to happen now, but we definitely got to worry about the government controlling every aspect of our life because it can turn over pretty quickly. But the polarization it does have everything so spread right now. It seems like everybody is so divided. And I don't think, because when I was doing research on you, I did realize you had opinions. It surprised me because I had put you in a conservative box, not because I had listened to you and thought, oh, you're just conservative, just from perception of seeing things every now and then. And then I saw you had some views that I like to say build bridges with the other side. Talk about some of the views that the left might know that you actually support.
Sure. Well, I believe in limited government. So I'm very consistent on that belief. So when we talk about abortion, we talk about pro-life, pro-choice. I can be personally pro-life, but I believe in a limited government. So for that reason, I've always considered myself more on the pro-choice side. As far as same-sex marriage, I'm one of those people that really, when you look at all the social issues, if I don't have to pay for it, I don't really care what somebody does in their own life. If it doesn't have disastrous consequences for the rest of society, I think you should be able to do what you want to do. And that's same-sex marriage, that's issues with abortion, being pro-life, pro-choice. And there's a lot of gray area there as well. I mean, when you say, conservatives hate when you say I'm pro-choice, because then they just immediately think, well, you believe in late-term abortion. No, there's a lot of steps to be taken there. But primarily, I believe in as limited government as possible because I don't think the government's that effective. Same thing with gun laws. I don't think that the government is that effective, so why would we introduce more laws and regulations and more red tape and more bureaucracy and more government control if it's not solving a problem? That's how I feel when we talk about the abortion question. If the government's not effective, why is it in that position?
Yeah, and to your point, even before, right now with the COVID stuff, it is government coming in to save us and, control our lives in many ways. And I mean, I don't like to be told what to do. I don't like to tell other people what to do either. You know, it's like, we should all be able to live our lives as long as we're not hurting someone else. To me, pretty much we should be able to do it. But, you know, where it's going right now, I think there's so much distrust because the messaging that we got, one of the problems I have with Dr. Fauci, the programming that we got was masks don't work, don't wear your mask. A month later or so, he said, oh, I just said that because I didn't want the people to go out and get masks for our healthcare workers. But you're just saying that you just lied to the whole country. And I don't know what's true or what's not true with that. But whenever they tell lies like that, they have to realize that it's going to cause some distrust, you know, on the other end.
And the agenda, I think, is what worries me the most. And when I tell people about, when we talk about masks, we talk about any of the restrictions, any of the lockdowns that we had, the safer at home, there's a lot that bothers me about that. But for me, it's everybody thinking about this so simply and not realizing that when we talk about the greater good, people losing their entire livelihoods, their businesses, something that they've worked for, having no income, now being reliant upon the government. To me, that might be the worst thing that can happen to you in your life, is having to be reliant on the government. I never want to be put in that position, but so many Americans have been forced into that position. Talking about coming from California. You know, it's bad here in Nashville. Went from phase 3 to phase 2. They just went back to basically another lockdown, everything being closed. Those businesses were open for a few weeks, hired back employees, thought they were going to be okay, and then the government comes in again and says, nope, shutting you back down, while conveniently ignoring the weeks-long protests that certainly contributed to an uptick in cases, but that wasn't politically convenient to tell people not to go out and protest for social justice. But now, all the people that just wanted to make a living and go to work are paying the price. And that's the agenda that we have to really worry about, is what is happening about political convenience, or is it about the health and safety of Americans? That's where the discussion needs to happen.
Sure. And, you know, I've been saying for the last 3 months, I think that the death from the poverty the coronavirus causes is going to be more than the coronavirus causes.
And mental health, suicide. I mean, we're seeing an uptick in that in a lot of places around this country. And when we say things like, things that bother me are the buzzwords, new normal. When people say new normal, I say, well, that's propaganda to me when you're saying that. When people say safer at home is not a universal term. There are many Americans in this country who are not safer at home, and in fact, home can be the most dangerous place they can be. We're talking about kids not being able to go back to school. That might be the only meal that they got all day. That might be the only place of safety and refuge that they had all day was that classroom. And now you're saying, nope, stay at home online learning. We don't know what goes on in the homes of so many families and children across this country. So just to say, no, the government says you're safer at home, that's bothersome to me. I don't like that term either.
Well, yeah, and we're in this together. You know, the programming has been, it's been obvious. About, I guess when this first thing went down, I don't watch the news at all. Don't turn it on. I don't like the polarization. But when the coronavirus first came out, I was watching TV for like a week. And I'm talking, it was changing me. It was like hearing the fear of the corona and this and that. I'm like, I got to shut this thing off because I recognize the programming, these terms that they're using. You were just hitting, I was like, gosh, yeah. New normal, stay at home, safer at home, stay at home, new normal, keeping us safe, like good. And then I turn on the radio. And the radio, I don't ever listen to the radio. I'm in San Diego, turn on the radio, same thing, the messaging. I felt like they were programming my brain to do exactly what whoever they is are saying. And so it does worry me, that whole idea that we are being programmed with terms. What is new normal? What is, you know...
If not being able to go to work and support your family and having to close down your business and keeping healthy people quarantined, if that's the new normal, we need to reject that immediately. That's another thing. The word quarantine bothers me. I see so many people, especially people my age, millennials, using that term and talking about, oh, well, how is your quarantine going? Well, it's not necessarily a quarantine because you're going to the grocery store 3 times a week. And also, if you're a healthy person, we don't quarantine healthy people, we quarantine sick people. Right. But now there's a whole generation of people that thinks that's what a quarantine is when the government tells you need to stay home. That's bothersome. We can talk about the merits of flattening the curve and all that all day long, and we can have discussions about it. But these terms and these buzzwords that people just take and they just absorb because that's what somebody told them to believe, and they stop questioning everything, we're going to get ourselves into a really bad spot. I already think that college kids have a really hard time questioning what they're being told. We know what way colleges are now with indoctrination, mostly liberal indoctrination, and now I think it's just going to get worse and worse. We saw the streets. We saw people posting black squares for Blackout Tuesday, not knowing that they thought that just meant equality. But if you look at it, you're posting in support of Black Lives Matter, the organization that's motto and that's agenda is defund the police. But if you talk to these young people my age, people all the way up to 40 and above, and you say you posted a black square, do you believe in defunding the police? And they have no idea what Black Lives Matter even stands for.
Right.
That's all. This whole summer, we're just really seeing the sheep in our society.
Well, let's talk about that, because the Black Lives Matter, I have a very unique situation with my black friends as far as one of my main business partners is black. We've lived in multiple places together. My fight team was primarily black. I was an agent for Dr. Roddy Ferguson, 2004 Olympian. I went to Howard University, historic black college. My other business partner, historic black college. And I've been asking questions for many, many years. My business partner was very involved in Black Lives Matter, and I support saying Black Lives Matter. I haven't gotten the whole Black Lives Matter, all lives matter thing. No, I don't mind saying that. I don't mind openly protesting with them and saying, no, I believe that this matters. But what I don't know, is you have the organization, and then you have the term Black Lives Matter, then you have the protests. Isn't there a way to where you can say Black Lives Matter without saying you're supporting all of the mission of the organization that is, from what I've read, largely Marxist?
Well, I think that there is, but when that is their organization and that's the messaging from the organization, and you're seeing leaders, we saw a leader that I actually interviewed from my own show on Fox Nation, the chairman of Black Lives Matter New York, saying, if this country doesn't give us what we want, we're going to burn it down and start a new one. And saying that, sometimes violence is the way you solve things, and going after police officers and the rhetoric that they're using, that is their organization.
I see.
So it's really hard to separate it unless the organization itself says, that's not us. We haven't seen that, though.
Sure.
We haven't seen that. And then there are so many people that also, it's great to talk about justice and accountability. It's great to talk about what that means for police departments. It's great to have that conversation. But when we're not operating on the facts, that's what bothers me most. When people are saying, I'm protesting for rampant police brutality, and you remind them that last year there were 19 white unarmed suspects killed by police, and there were 9 black unarmed suspects killed by police. So look at the numbers. So rampant police brutality against black Americans is not rampant. Is it a problem? Do we need to talk about it anytime it happens? Yes. But to say that it's rampant and police officers are going out committing acts of systemic racism every time they put on that badge and uniform is a lie.
Yeah, I think that, perspective, and I don't know the statistics, actually. When I hear 9 and... What do you say, 19 and 9? That seems low to me all the way around. Only, what,
and we
28?
Lost close to 90 police officers in the line of duty
but
so far.
Perspective, Dedrick, when I'm talking to him about it, basically we were talking about, he's like, have you ever been pulled over when you're walking down the street? And I said, no, never been stopped walking down the street. And I was like, how many times have you? And he said, hundreds from Chicago. I'm not used to that. You're not used to that. I think that whether it's through Black Lives Matter and saying that this has been good in starting a conversation to where we can at least see, another perspective of what it's like for somebody's daily life. If that makes sense.
And it is, and I think that that's the conversation. There needs to be a level of understanding there, because I've never walked in that person's shoes. They've also never walked in mine, because I can tell you this. There are a lot of places in a lot of cities where if I walk down the street, I would be in danger, just simply because of the way that I look.
Right.
So I'm not saying I understand their perspective, but also, can you understand other people's? No, we have to have a conversation. It's a dialogue to be had. But we're now in this pissing contest of who's being oppressed more, the oppression Olympics. To me, one of the biggest things I've done in my career is question this victimhood complex that people have. It's not saying that we don't address problems and issues and feelings, because we do, But when we're going out of our way to tell a certain group of people that they're victims, I don't see how that's empowering. I don't see how anyone's ever been empowered by telling them that they're a victim.
Right. No, I mean, the whole victimhood and personal responsibility, that's, I mean, one way I live my life is personally responsible. I'm not going to be a victim to anything. And I agree with that idea. I'm not sure that everybody understands the perspective, though. Maybe they don't have the education. Maybe they don't have the training, the parents, this or that, to actually understand that, why it's good to be personally responsible. And that's where I think the conversation overall is good, because in many ways it can become a teaching moment and a learning moment where I can learn something, you can start learning something, everybody can learn something. It's like, oh, why is living personally responsible better? What is the difference between white privilege and privilege? I was having a conversation with a buddy who's a state rep, a black guy state rep here in Tennessee. And he said, I want to move the conversation from, white privilege to privilege. An example, I was raised great parents, great mom and dad, not wealthy at all. My dad had an accident when I was 4. They worked really hard for the next 10 years to kind of pull us out. And went to public school, Overton High School here in Nashville. Very diverse group. And, the people that went to the private schools, MBA, FRA, they have privilege over me. But my wrestling teammates, we won 3 state championships in Tennessee while I was there. My wrestling teammates, 2 of my best friends were black twins. They didn't even have a mom or dad at their home. So I would go spend the night at their house, and they didn't even have anybody there. I have a privilege over them by having a mom and dad. And so I think it's really taking these situations and realizing what everybody's going through to, because the more understanding and compassion for people's situations, I think the more that we can have solutions, but we've got to be able to have that conversation openly.
But the conversation, to me, where it starts getting murky and where we stop moving, towards solutions and we start regressing is when it's, my life isn't the way I want it to be. So it must be that person's fault, that person's fault, that person's fault.
Sure.
Because pointing the finger isn't going to change your life. At some point, we've all been a victim of something. Some have been in a way worse situation than others. But unless they can look in the mirror and say, this is the way I want my life to be, they will never attain whatever they want to attain by pointing the finger and saying, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. It might very well be that person's fault.
Sure.
But it's not empowering to say, well, it's your fault, and so now if I don't attain what I want to attain, it's because of my limitations. I don't want people to be limited. I want people to say, I've had a rough go of it, and I have had to deal with obstacles that other people don't. But I'm going to overcome, and I'm going to get there, and I'm going to be that much more successful because I went through those experiences, rather than if I don't make it, it's because it's that person's fault.
Sure.
That to me is so limiting. I don't want that for people. I want everybody to reach their level of potential, and I think that this constant, it's not your fault, you're a victim, the world owes you something. I've never seen anybody come out of that in the place they want to be.
No, and I agree with that. I guess the question would be, how do we get people to that point? Like as a society, how do we really, because, when you talk about personal responsibility, like we could be on the same page, but, it's just like when I train fighters, teaching personal responsibility each and every, it's difficult. How do we do that with a society as divided as it is right now?
We've got an entitlement complex that's coming up through our school system as well. And it's white kids, black kids, brown kids, Asian kids, Hispanic kids. It's an entitlement complex that kids are being taught, that they don't really have to work for things. And it's this feeling and this sense of entitlement. I'm a millennial, so I feel like I can say that about my fellow millennials, because we do have a very divided generation where half of us are really going to go kick ass and create an app or have a great job or really hustle and excel. And then we have others who are like, well, I really would just like to make $200K a year and have a vacation and work in my underwear, and that's really all I want to do. And it's that everyone gets a trophy. And that's what happens when the everyone gets a trophy generation grows up.
Yeah,
Here we are.
That's kind of what we're living in right now. It's when this whole COVID thing was going down, I was like, a lot of millennials in their glass boxes are going to be really upset because it's going to come crashing down. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're starting to see that, and I don't even feel like we have the pain that people realize the pain we're going to be going through. Like right now, people think it's bad. This is nothing.
No, when it finally hits, that's when it's going to really take its toll. And we're looking at even just Nashville. I mean, I just moved here, but to me, the writing is on the wall because I lived in California. You've lived in California. I saw the way California politics operated. I saw California as, quite frankly, a house of cards. And I think California is months away from that house of cards just completely caving in. And I don't want to see the same thing happen to Nashville. But when I see the solution to every problem be, well, if we just raise taxes, well, if we just pinch this more, pinch the people a little bit more, give our city workers a pay raise, but just pinch everyone else, and that's how we'll make up the difference. That's California politics. That's why California has the highest income inequality based on population in the nation. That's why you have a homeless epidemic in California. I don't want to see that come here. I don't want to see a place as great as Nashville completely cave in because the leadership refused to take accountability. I think that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, well, Nashville's interesting because we used to have Democrats in office, but they were fiscally conservative, and I've got a lot of friends that are Democrats at the state level, and most of them are fiscally conservative too. They understand that idea, but we've got almost like a new group of Democrats that are in. A lot of them, aren't necessarily from here. Of course, the current mayor is, but they really have kind of gone crazy on the spending. They really did go crazy on all of the development downtown, giving away these, it's corporate welfare is what it is. You got a building at 5th and Broadway. I don't know if you saw this on the podcast, but 5th and Broadway was 4 city blocks. The old convention center was there. They sold 5th and Broadway that was worth $75 to $105 million. They sold it to $5 million for $5 million to these developers. Then they gave them about $2 million to knock down the old convention center because they couldn't get funding without it being knocked down. Then they gave them $40 million to build the parking garage, and then they exempt them from their property taxes. That's how we're in this mess.
Right, but then you look at the people in Nashville that are especially going to be struggling. I mean, we're a music town. Look at people that are not going to be touring right now. Look at, I'm friends with the Smith family. They're obviously hopping mad at everything that's going on. But I think that there's a level, and I see it more on the Democratic side, that they don't understand that you might be mad, like John Cooper, our mayor, might really hate Steve Smith. So he might be really wanting to stick it to Steve Smith and his bars. But Steve Smith has got a lot of money. He's going to be okay. Guess who's not? All the bartenders,
employees,
all the waitresses, all the bouncers, all the musicians that are playing there that really rely on that to make their career and also get by for extra money. All those people are going to be impacted. So then going from, talking about going from phase 3, snapping back to phase 2, because of an uptick in COVID cases, and then completely ignoring the fact that we had protests in which our own mayor encouraged, in fact, tweeted out, "Join me in protest."
Sure.
And then you're going to punish business owners. And if you look at the timeline from the uptick, if it takes 14 days, those numbers came in and an uptick of cases came, and you can't say it's not from those things.
Well, yeah, and the way they did the contact tracing, I'm going to get clarity. I've been working on getting clarity when they started asking when the contact tracer started asking people if they attended protests. Because my understanding is it just started happening last week, but I got to get clarification on that, which would be why we don't see that in the numbers. But I guess I supported the protests when they happened. I also support all the bars opening. But when they started saying that, the protest didn't cause any spread, I'm like, come on. Like, you're politicizing it.
Or when the protests turned to them setting the courthouse on fire or looting Boot Barn in Margaritaville. Sorry, that's where you lose me on protest. When you feel that you have the right to steal from other people, your message now means nothing.
Yeah, well, and that's riots. You can have peaceful protesters and then riots. That's a riot that broke out. I guess a few days later they had other protests where, thankfully, there weren't any riots. And my friends at the police department told me that they did a lot to keep everybody safe, by the way. A lot of people didn't give them credit for, or some credit for supporting that and happening as well. I guess my point is, there's a problem when you can't even acknowledge that a group of 10,000 to 15,000 people whether you support the protest or not, I mean, it's kind of logical that it's likely going to spread some coronavirus, just like it's likely the bars are going to spread some coronavirus. Nothing wrong with saying that. This is life. We're living with this thing right now. There's no getting away from it. I was grilling out last night. 4 of the 6 people that were at my house last night had already recovered from COVID without any symptoms. This virus is out. It's been out. And we're going to be living with it. And I don't see the point of like separating one group and saying, "Oh no, nothing to see over here."
Yep. Well, that's why the agenda is so bothersome to me. What's politically convenient, and it's funny because this seems to happen about every 4 years, doesn't it? So that's what's really bothersome to me, is that we're being led by a political agenda when you're just ignoring the mass gatherings of people, not just protests but pride parades. And like I said, I'm socially liberal. I don't care if you want to have a pride parade. But when you're telling people that they can't open up their bar and their business and make a living for themselves and their family, but you're saying that your pride parade and your protests are okay, that's where you're not being consistent.
You're not being consistent. It's like, and that's all I'm asking for. I think that's all you're asking, consistency.
But how are we going to, especially when we talk about this, when we talk about, you asked me earlier, what are the solutions to personal accountability? What are the solutions to making life better for Americans? I believe that it's less government, but I also believe it's more economic opportunity. People that are doing well and their communities are doing well and they're opening small businesses and their schools are better and their property values are higher and everybody has a sense of purpose, a place to go, a job to go to, a family to come home to at night, and you foster that community, you will be better off. What we're seeing now is our economy just collapsing. And when people say you put the economy over health, no, but you have to understand that there are people in communities that their communities and their small businesses are going to be shuttered permanently. And that was their opportunity out. That was their opportunity to do better for themselves, for their families, for their communities. That was their opportunity in their minority community, in their white community, in whatever community in which they live, to better themselves and provide for their family and their community. And that has now been snatched away. And business owners right now are having to look over their shoulders every day, wondering when the next shoe is going to drop. And that's just a constant state of fear that's not healthy for anybody. I can't imagine what that must feel like.
No, it's brutal. I mean, here at East Ivy, I came back. Last year I was in the airport 93 days running my main businesses. And I came back here, though, because they shut everything down again. Every wedding in April was canceled. Every wedding in May was canceled. Every wedding in June was canceled. So you have 3 months. And thankfully, I'm in a different boat than most people able to weather a storm like this. Mm-hmm. And it's a giant cash, suck out of my life. Barely hanging on, but I'm one of the few that could hang on to all of this while this is going on. But when they moved us to phase 3, I had renegotiated my mortgage, brought back a couple key people, new landscaping company here, got everything set up for July. 10 days later, they move it back to phase 2. $45,000 in refunds got to give back for July.
And just think about that too. That's just one person. Think about the hairstylist that got laid off. Think about the makeup artist that got laid off. Think about the band that was going to play the wedding. Think about the catering company.
Yes.
All at the snap of a mayor's fingers, who also raised property taxes 34% while giving himself a 1% pay increase. And by the way, still taking a salary through all of this while some people were able to take in $0 in income. If this person is really one of the people, why did he not donate his salary back while he was crushing the rest of us?
Yeah, so he actually did a salary increase too?
Yeah, well, they keep that real under wraps, but if you're like me and you call the mayor's office, it was a 1% increase for city employees. Well, Mr. Mayor and his mayoral team got that increase. And so it's like, it's really easy. Well, it's just city workers, and then they funded the police more, and I'm okay with that. But Mr. Mayor, you are not seeing even just from a perspective of PR. Mm-hmm. That's why I keep questioning over and over again. Because if you're willing to take away somebody else's income at just the snap of a finger, then shouldn't you be also willing? Because his job is secure. He can go on there and do his little press conferences and wear his little dorky masks all the time and post it on Instagram and feel real great about himself.
Yeah.
What about all the people that can't work right now?
No, there has been a big disconnect with the mayor. I mean, I didn't know he got a 1% increase. I'm for the city employees getting an increase because the teachers were supposed to get their pay increase last year, and we couldn't do it even in a great economy. Hello, Nashville. But yeah, they do have to take a step back and look at what they're doing, how it looks to other people that are suffering. There's so many people hurting right now. I was saying this the other day, like we're all hurting. I don't care if you're black, white,
Right.
whatever. Everybody's hurting in some way. Might be going a little crazy. I've had some crazy days where I'm having some crazy thoughts right now. I mean, it's crazy times. We're all, going through this and hurting. But whenever your leadership feels so disconnected from the plight of, everybody,
Right.
it's hard to get behind them and think things can get better.
Well, especially when you slap a 34% property tax increase.
Yeah.
We lived in California. I have never heard of an overnight 34% property tax increase.
Yeah,
That's insane.
it is. And his argument is that
They were already low.
Yeah, they were
That
already very
argument
low.
pisses me off so much, and I'll tell you why. Because as we were just talking about the plight of people, when he uses that as his rationale and the other Democratic leaders use that as the rationale, it aggravates me to no end. Because I, like you, didn't come from a family with a ton of money. My parents budgeted out everything that they could afford, and they didn't go beyond their means. They knew how much their property taxes were going to be, and when you raise someone's property taxes 34%, I don't care if they were already low. That's what they budgeted for. Raising it 34% is devastating to people. Yes, they were already low, but that's what people thought was going to be. And if they thought it was going to go up, they prepared for maybe 5%, God, maybe 10, 34% overnight during coronavirus after a tornado.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's brutal. It's like getting kicked in the nuts for me. I'm like, man, this is not the time. And I hear what they're saying, like, oh, we got to do something. Like, no, like you could furlough some government employees. That's one thing that you could do. That didn't
Right.
happen. You could make some big adjustments, painful adjustments, just like I had to lay off over 100 people last week in my other company. Like, painful. You think I like to do that? This is brutal times. But, you got to make these tough decisions sometimes. And, he talks about leadership being, making unpopular decisions. But I don't think it's just that. It's like it's taking a stand for everybody to make things better. Like shutting things down and just talking about cases increasing when mortality is dropping, that's not leadership. That's like not talking about the elephant in the room.
He also didn't go by his own metrics. When we started off in these phased reopenings, when this was announced that we were moving away from safer at home, we were going into phased reopenings, he had bars that he needed to hit in order for us to go to the next phase. But they were arbitrary because we'd see cases go up, we'd see a couple more deaths, and then we moved from phase 1 to phase 2. It was later, but then the numbers didn't change. So it's like he wasn't following his own bars that were being set.
No.
And it's just arbitrary based on the political pressure he was getting. Then he started getting that political pressure. That's why we went to phase 3. And then all of a sudden it was, then the rest of the country started freezing. And then he's like, now it's politically convenient for me to go back to phase 2 because it'll be more palatable. When Texas and everywhere else was opening, he was like, it'll hurry it up, go to phase 3. Oh, well, I can see now I can take us back, and it looks like in the landscape of things, I won't look like such a bad guy, so bring you on back. And I also do think he has a personal vendetta against Steve Smith and Broadway bar owners. I personally think he does because nobody else challenges him in this town. Everybody here, the thing that bothers me as much as I love being in Nashville, and I really do love being here, but I don't see a fight in people here. There's a fight in California. If you're a conservative or you have a solar panel mandate or you see a gas tax, there is a group of people that are just like, I'd make movies, I make millions of dollars, I don't care. But there's a lot of people, they might be the minority, but they are fighting mad and they are ready to go out and they're ready to fight. I don't see it in Nashville. I see a lot of people that are like, 34% property tax increase, well, yeah. Oh, we're going back to phase 2, well. And I don't see it because for me, I've been trying to lead and help the effort to recall the mayor, at least to send a message. And people here are like, I'm from Knoxville. I'm not really registered in Davidson County. I never really bothered to change my voter registration. I'm still like,
Yeah.
where is your fight? This is your town. Fight for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the property tax was brutal. And, as far as the mayor having a vendetta against the bars and Nashvillians not being willing to fight, I'll tell you this from my perspective, being here 38 years, going to public school in Nashville. I always saw a difference between public school and private school. So I know a lot of these guys, they went to private school. They're cool, but, like, didn't grow up like me. They want to help. They say they want to help black people, but they really, I don't really know if they just feel bad for being white or if they really do want to help black people. Because there's a lot of solutions that we have out there that could actually help the minority groups that are being disenfranchised. But, when I look at Nashvillians wanting to fight, that's why I bring this up, people that are from here, no, they want to fight. What you're seeing right now in Nashville is people moving here. And
from California.
Internally, kind of everybody knows everybody. I have a lot of respect for Steve. I mean, what he's done for Broadway, it's incredible. Right. People don't give him the credit for that, and he deserves a lot of it. But, and maybe the mayor's office doesn't like Steve, and Steve he'll poke him, and we got to realize people are people as well, no matter what, we see these guys that are these politicians and think they're immune to letting these personal attacks hurt them. I think that, they build up this wall, and all of a sudden you can't get to the wall even when you're talking, normal things. So I think there's a lot of different sides. I'm just saying that. But, as far as people fighting in Nashville, I don't think it's quite there yet. I don't. But
well,
I think
wait until the state turns blue and they start bringing in that state income tax, and then you're going to see people get pissed. That's another thing. They got the cushion of being in Tennessee, so they can live in their happy little Nashville world of a bunch of liberals and hipsters because they don't pay a state income tax because you live in a red state, but you live in a little blue bubble. And it looks like the blue bubble is all happy and, clowns and unicorns because you're being sheltered by a conservative governor and in a conservative state. But we start letting these big places like Nashville start dropping and Memphis and all of them, and pretty soon you don't have a red state anymore. And you don't think that they're going to bring those kind of things to the state level? If a Cooper was in charge, if Cooper was our governor right now, we'd have a state income tax.
Yeah. No, well, no, what I was going to say is, as far as, I agree with you. But as far as, we're like we're almost there. There's almost that pressure cooker, just from hearing my friends, they're not ready to just completely go crazy on Cooper yet, but it's almost to that point. And I'd say the reason, I got the whole recall John Cooper, I think we need to recall all the council. That's for damn sure. Mm-hmm. Cooper concerns me, I'll tell you why. We've had 4 mayors in 4 years. I mean, that is a lot. I was in Puerto Rico a lot of last year. And they overthrew the governor. They overthrew all these, always wanting to get and you lose so much stability.
Right.
That's where I'm coming. And I want the best for Nashville. That's 110% what I want. This is my city. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. No, I'm fighting for Nashville, whether you like what I say or not. And, so is that the best? I don't know. It might be. I'm not quite there yet, but when I'm talking to my friends about these are their concerns too, we've had so many mayors, we lost, we went from Dean and then, Briley, then we had Megan Barry, and then she got arrested, and Briley.
Well, what do they all have in common?
They're all Democrats.
Maybe that's your problem. And you know what? Even if he doesn't get fully recalled, a message needs to be sent that the people are listening. We see what you're doing, and we're not okay with it.
Yeah.
It can't just be oh boy, that was a tough day. I had to announce the 34% property tax increase, but now I'm going to go wear my stupid mask and I'm going to go up to the local florist and do my little Instagram post and all is forgiven. No, he needs to know you're impacting real people. So that's why, and I say, again, I do say that all your mayors have been Democrats, so I think that's your problem. But also, I think that this mayor feels like he kind of feels like he's in that sweet spot of, people here, they're kind of complacent or they don't really want a big shift. And I think that's where he needs to be told, no, you're being watched.
Yeah, no, I'd be interested to see too, because it would shake him up if that recall went through. You're exactly right on that. And, I would love to see if he were recalled, if this did happen. Let's just say it happened. Let's just go there for a minute. Somebody to run against the mayor that would say, I'm going to open up the city. I'm going to open it back for business. I'm going to bring tourism in. I'm going to separate the at-risk populations. If you're 65 and up, I'm going to really suggest you stay at home. Right. If you're under 40 years old, you probably don't have that big of a chance to die. People can still die under 40, no doubt about it. We're not saying it's not real. when you separate the populations, I like to say stay away. I think it should have been hashtag stay away rather than stay home. Stay away from those that are could possibly be, most affected. 44% of the people that have died in the United States of coronavirus died in nursing homes. Like, if we could have just separated them. But I would say, open up the city, let's separate the populations. I'm going to bring your tax back to normal, but we got to get this business going. I would ask all of the people that got tax breaks downtown, all the big companies, to start paying something. You know what? Talk about fair share, which I hate saying, pay your fair share. No, hey, pay your fair share. Let's use a liberal term on them and get everybody paying something. And I bet you they would. I mean,
I think they would too, because right now, nobody is benefiting from this.
Right.
Nobody is. And I know that people say, oh, well, Texas, I used to live in Dallas. Well, they say, well, Dallas reopened too soon, and that's why you're seeing the uptick in the cases. Again, they had mass protests longer than we did, far longer. I have friends that lived in Dallas. The guy that was beat to death on the street was down the street from my friend's apartment complex. Her windows were busted out of her whole place. I mean, Dallas was a mess. But then they're blaming Governor Abbott, oh, you opened too soon. That's the thing I think everybody's worried about, is that they're going to see an uptick in cases. But at some point, I always say this, and I pose it as a question. Is the point to flatten the curve, as we were told, or is the point to eradicate the virus? Because if the point is to eradicate the virus, then whether we stay closed now and we go back to phase 2, phase 1, or stay at home, we're not eradicating the virus. Because once we do reopen again, we're going to have an uptick in cases. That is what is going to happen.
Of course.
So the whole point was, let's make sure we have ventilators and hospital beds so we can take care of people. The point wasn't, let's stay at home until nothing can hurt us anymore.
Right. Yeah, when it was flattening the curve was really delaying the inevitable. It was meant to get
And I
time.
get that they didn't want to overwhelm the hospital, so I understood that. When it was originally sold to us as like a 2-week thing.
Yes. 2 weeks.
And then and then people started getting really comfortable with this new normal, and they started saying, oh, well, and then you can see a big difference between the people that watch the news all day long and the people that watch the news somewhat, people that are reading online and staying up to date, but the people that are just kind of watching the fear porn all day long, their mindset is completely different from those who are looking at it logically and saying, we need to protect the vulnerable. We need to make sure that the elderly are given the protections that they need, stay at home, do what we can. But there has got to be a way that we can go back to normal and still protect those people and still be able to get our country moving again, because this is not sustainable.
It's not working.
We can't do this.
No, we absolutely can't. And that's what I'd love to see out of John Cooper in Nashville. Like, look, dude, just get up there and actually be bold. Have a vision. Be visionary here. Because I heard him say, well, we're doing what the other cities, and I'm like, dude, I don't care what the other cities are doing. What they're doing isn't working. It's not working. I mean, and this idea where you see the cases going, it's not working. Like, you could have a logical approach.
Right.
And
we should have never gone back to phase 2.
No.
That was the biggest load of garbage he has done.
Yeah, well, and it's a lot of his advisors too. We got to look like behind the curtains, like who's advising him. And I think if you dig in there, you'll see that he has a lot of people really, really influencing him, and he's not the person calling the shots. I mean,
I think he's a career politician. He comes from a family of politicians. That's what they do. Yeah. That is what they do. But it is bothering people that don't have a dog in the fight. That's what really bothers me. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing a lot of people advising, and you know what? We should be listening to scientists and medical experts. But there also needs to be some people mixed in there that are business owners, people that are mental health experts, people that are saying, what is the overall effect? Because you can't look at a problem and just say, follow the scientists, follow the doctors, and then exclude everybody else, that there's still a big spectrum of life out there that needs to be taken into account. And it has to be an approach that keeps all of that in mind, because I don't think anybody's going to be happy living in their home staring at the window, being scared for the rest of their life because they might go outside and something bad might happen to them. We take that risk every day we get into a car. We take that risk every time we get into an airplane. There are things that are a lot more risky that we're willing to do, but for some reason in our minds, this just is not one of them. It's just a wait until the government tells us it's safe.
Right. Well, even getting in an airplane, they had their infographic last week. It was the Serious 6. And they were breaking down like the 6 most dangerous things basically that you could be doing. Like, one of them was weddings. So I took I was like, what do you mean weddings? Weddings? Like, we haven't had any weddings. I know you're full of shit. So we called him out on that. But one of the things that bothered me was that at 13%, this was not on their Series 6. At 13%, they had domestic travel. I'm like, oh, you're going to exclude domestic travel on your infographic to the public, but you're going to put weddings in there. And then when the mayor gave the press conference, he put small gatherings and parties, church outings, and weddings all in one group at 16%. I'm like, oh, you lumped them all together to make a bigger number, but I
They're
knew
very different things.
Yes, I know what his. I'm not saying it was him. I think it's the speechwriters or whoever's behind the curtains, like pumping this propaganda out.
But at the end of the day, it buck stops with him.
Sure,
He's the leader. We can blame it on the council, whatever. He's the mayor. He is the mayor. I don't care who's pulling his strings. Stop pulling the strings.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I say the same thing to our president. I'm a big Trump supporter. I think everybody knows that at this point. But he's had some horrible advisors, Michael Bolton being one of them. I don't like Jared Kushner, to be honest with you. And I think there are a lot of people that advise the president that I'm like, I really support the president, but someone had him do this, that, and the other that I disagree with. But at the end of the day, if the president does it, I can't be like, well, that's Jared's fault. I have to say, Mr. President, look who's advising you. Make better decisions, have better people around you in certain instances.
No, he's going to have to at this point because the advisors are bringing him down an interesting path. Like he's flip-floppy. He's trying to do what everybody else is doing. I think Nashville needs bold leadership. I think it needs somebody with a vision. Like, let's go. Let's see what can we create. How can we make this happen? And how can we get everybody in the city to get behind it? Because you're talking about like the people in Nashville. I think we're like 6 months away from blowing our lid. I think it's like that's the locals that have been here like want to give this guy a chance. It's like, come on, Cooper. He was good. He was good. He wasn't going to raise taxes. He was good with the fiscally before. He was a kind of a budget hawk. So going into it, but then all this happened, and it's like he operated off of fear. So I've wanted to give him a chance, but if he doesn't, we got to get somebody in there with some vision and that can kind of drive this city. I haven't seen anywhere in the country. I mean, you've got Gavin Newsom in California who looks like a dictator up there. He kind of freaks me out.
He is.
He basically is. You've got the what's the Los Angeles
Garcetti?
Yes, you got that guy. Same type of thing. I mean, what they've done to those Los Angeles residents. I was in Hollywood, staying at the Roosevelt, and the military was on the streets, and it was like right when it was all going down, and like I got to sit by the pool, but you couldn't actually have them brave. It was one of those weird things, and it was like a war zone there. They had really created this fear. You could feel the fear in the air. And, I see these leaders, and I think that, like, if you look at New York, what happened with Cuomo, I think people liked to have Cuomo because he was being honest as, he was telling people straightly kind of what was going on, and they weren't used to that. Wasn't effective in the end what he was doing, but I think that was like a breath of fresh air. And we don't have, I guess my point is at the state level, at the city level, we don't have bold leadership. Somebody like Cuomo could get a lot of people behind him on the right and left for a while because he was showing some leadership qualities, but nobody else is really doing that at all. Nobody else is being bold right now.
See, and that's the thing, talking about California and talking about the things that I worry about coming to Nashville. You look at some of the things that they were able to slip under the radar because people weren't paying attention. Some of the things that they're passing, allowing them to basically take over hotels and put homeless people in hotels. And they're putting these things in place so that this isn't just for an emergency coronavirus. They're putting these things in place that are going to be lasting, and people don't realize it.
Right.
People don't realize what they're tanking, and then people are going to come up and buy them up. But your average middle-class Californian was already struggling. After this, I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to need a big bailout from the federal government. And I think that personally, what's happening in California is Gavin and the rest of them want the state to get so bad that they need these bailouts, because that bailout, then he can pass it all off as coronavirus instead of looking that this has been a house of cards for 5 years plus. Everything was bad. But now he can be like, it collapsed because of coronavirus, guys. Sorry, need a bailout. But what about your homeless epidemic? What about the fact that your middle class was being squeezed out? You had a mass exodus from California, fleeing California already. You just swept all that under the rug and called it coronavirus.
Right.
And you see it on a grand scale with Gavin, but to me, you see it with Cooper as well. You see it's Democrats that are covering the tracks of their failed leadership and putting it all off on coronavirus.
Well, yeah, and they really are. It's failed leadership. We're not seeing much leadership. Florida, he has been doing pretty good. He's been getting beat up, of course, in the media. It's DeSantis,
because you're seeing
right?
the cases, but why are people not? This is the thing. I work in the media, but the media, the fake news media, and the media with an agenda bothers me more than anything else. You're seeing their selective reporting. We could talk about remember the protests were so illustrious and so great, but if you recall, before those protests happened in Michigan, when the blue collar workers were coming out protesting their governor for being a tyrannical person, leader, that was, you're going to spread coronavirus. Most of these were in their car. But then when the other protests happened, then all of a sudden that was noble, and that didn't cause an uptick.
Right.
It's the selective, but the way that the media is playing this all out, and you're looking at California, and you're looking at Florida, and you're looking at New York. Well, why are we not calling out these nursing homes that their leadership were sending elderly people back to their nursing homes?
Yeah.
They're not talking about that, but they're talking about all the new cases in Florida. I have family members and friends who live in Florida. The lines to get tested are so long because everybody now is in panic and they want to go get tested. So you're seeing your cases go up because you've got lines and lines of people going to get tested. Where they were testing this many people a day, now they're testing this many people a day. And the reporting there has not been honest. There's been reports that just came out today that they had, there were areas where they were reporting 100%.
Yeah, I saw that. That's crazy. I mean, that's going on right now. The whole testing, I like the idea of more testing. I think it's good when people know. Right. I just had two of my patients just test positive yesterday.
Let me guess, asymptomatic.
Asymptomatic. Yeah, we have to quarantine them, et cetera. But it's interesting because it's good to know, right? Good to get people, I say quarantine. Good to separate people. But and what I'm looking at when these numbers are going up is the positive rate. So the positive rate is going up. So I think that we're seeing more testing, which of course is going to cause more positive tests, and we're also seeing the positivity rate go up. But we're seeing it in a younger demographic. So, just because the numbers are rising doesn't mean people are dying. Isn't that what we're afraid of? We should be I think we're afraid of people dying. We don't want people to die.
Dying and hospitalizations. Yeah, we're worried about having the resources.
And we're fine. We're that demographic, under 40, I mean, like I said, it's about the same idea.
But it's just, what is the solution? Because we're going to have to go back and do things. So but you know what, the thing that also bothers me is that people are willing to accept, and I say people, mostly Democrats, are willing to accept every tyrannical restriction that's been placed on them, from safer at home, through the phases, through the snapping back to more lockdowns. They're willing to accept all those things. They're willing to accept a mask mandate. They're willing to stay at home. They're willing to let businesses fail. All of that because the government told them was okay, and government said that's what you need to do. They will accept all of it, and they will feel like great, noble citizens for doing it. But if you tell these people, you know what? For you personally and your family, if you would exercise, eat better, you will have a higher likelihood of not only not dying from coronavirus, but from anything else. But damn it, they're not willing to do that. Oh God, no. I'll wear a mask all day, but eat healthy, eat a vegetable every now and then. Oh no. But no, the government didn't tell me to do that yet. But the government told me that this, and this was going to keep me safe. But then if you just be a logical person and be like, you know what, maybe we should wash our hands. Maybe we shouldn't cough on people. Maybe we should just do the standard things to not get coronavirus or the flu or anything else. Maybe we should just practice those things moving forward. But it's just that's out the window. But what about?
That has not been talked about. It's been surprising. There's good studies on vitamin D, lowering the risk of coronavirus death. Obviously, we know that the healthier you are, the lower risk you have of dying of coronavirus. I mean, the reason that you see the death rate going up as people get older, because as people get older, they have more diseases.
Yeah,
that's why. So it's pretty obvious that the healthier we get people. I mean, just think about this. We've been at this for 3 or 4 months? I don't even know. 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, 4, going on 5.
Imagine if they put just as much effort into getting everyone healthy as
Right.
they did into scaring the hell out of them. I mean, in 4 months, most people could drop 20 to 30 pounds. They can get their blood
Well,
pressure
don't
down,
forget, they closed their
cholesterol.
gyms. They closed their gyms. Essential businesses. Alcoholics Anonymous was not an essential business, but a liquor store was. That's interesting. Gyms. That's one of the first things that was closed. That's also one of the things that a lot of places are still not reopening, or especially in California, all fitness centers are now closed. So you have places where people would go to get healthier that, quite frankly, heart disease is still the number one killer.
Yeah.
Not coronavirus. So by closing down all these gyms and places that people go, not only for their physical health, but for their mental health, that was seen as not essential, and it still is.
Right. Well, yeah. Yesterday I was interviewing somebody that has, gosh, what is it? The Nashville Recovery Center, and they had to close down a lot of their meetings because of the AANA meetings, and he was talking about that effect on that demographic. Suicide hotlines in Nashville 3 months ago are up 800%. They're expecting 2 to 3 times the amount of suicides in the United States this year, 2 to 3 times the amount of deadly overdoses this year. That alone is going to be about equal to the amount of coronavirus deaths. They don't like to talk about that, and it bothers me saying that you care about people with mental illness, but you're not even. You say stay at home, isolate yourself, be away from everybody. Like, who's speaking out for these people? I mean, like it hasn't even been a conversation. And if you do, all of a sudden, no, you just want people to die. It's like, no, actually, I want people to live. I don't want people to suffer at home by themselves as they're going through this, horrible experience. If I'm going mentally crazy a little bit, then I know that
Right.
somebody that's just been stuck at their house, small bedroom, small apartment, whatever, on top of multiple family members, they've got to be losing their mind.
Oh, people that are at home with kids. Let's talk about that too. The school's not reopening in Nashville. That was another dereliction of duty by this mayor. We're not reopening schools in Davidson County in the fall. We're doing online learning. How the hell is a parent, or a two-parent household, a single-parent house, how are they supposed to go to work when they got kids that have to do online learning?
Yeah. No, they
And they can't
do it.
afford childcare. Not everyone can afford childcare. Not everyone can afford to have a nanny or afford to have a daycare, if those are even allowed to be open. What are these parents supposed to do that really, like I said, when we're talking about what they built into their budget, plan on having school and school activities for their children, and that's what they kind of planned on, and that's how they got by when they had to go to work. Now you've taken that away from these people, not to mention the effects it's going to have on kids that are learning online and not everyone can learn online. I have a friend who's a special ed teacher. Try teaching special ed children who have moderate to severe disabilities anything online.
Yeah.
It's impossible. And those kids, well, we just don't care about them anymore. They're just screw that entire population that you said that you cared about. So all these things have ramifications that but then it's like when you bring up these things, it's, well, you just want people to die from coronavirus. It's like,
No, actually, it's the
no,
opposite.
people die from a lot more things than coronavirus, and there are going to be a lot more things because of all this that's happening that people are going to suffer from, but nobody wants to talk about that because it's not politically convenient.
Yeah, it's unintended consequence. Kind of like, if you look at, the Iraq War, it's about blowback. There's blowback too. There's blowback anytime you go to war. I mean, this reminded me of like drums beating going into war. Like, oh my God, they're taking us down. They're going to be having us stay locked at home. What's going on right now? And then if you say anything different, well, then it was you're anti-American if you say anything different. Like, oh,
Right.
I'm not sure if we want this war. Like,
Right.
You're anti-American. Like, oh, no, actually, I just don't want my fellow Americans to die in a war that I don't know if it's the right
Right.
thing to do. This, like, oh, you just want people to die. Like, oh, well, no, actually, I don't want people to die. I'm just worried about this group of people that you're forgetting about, And it's bothered me. I feel for the addicts. I feel for the people that have mental illness. I want to help them. I appreciate all the people that are out there that are doing this for those people because somebody, and that's one of the things that we're doing in this podcast. Like I speak about this a lot, mental illness and addiction. Like we got to take care of these people. We cannot forget about them because it's a lot. It's our moms, our dads, our brothers, our cousins, our sisters, everybody. 50 million or so Americans are suffering from mental illness right now, something like that. I don't have the exact statistics, but it's a massive amount. If we forget about them, we're forgetting about everybody. You
Right.
know?
And look at California, look at your homeless population. I mean, I was actually shocked when I moved to Nashville to see how large the homeless population was here. Nothing like LA, obviously, but those are also things that I look at, and mental illness has a lot to do with that.
Oh, it does. It does.
A lot to do with it.
And you got to have compassion for those people that are suffering that don't have a voice. You have a show. I got this podcast, and we have means to take care of ourselves and all these things. But what about the homeless? What about those that are suffering? Think about all the people that have been committing suicide. I was talking about a few weeks ago in Knoxville, there were 8 people that killed themselves over the weekend. I mean, that is insane to me. And, and then talking about coronavirus in the idea of comparing it to other diseases. Hospital-acquired infections, 99,000 deaths because of hospital-acquired infections a year. Between 250,000 and 450,000 deaths a year from hospital errors. Now, imagine if the average person knew that going into the hospital with the coronavirus fear. They'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to get an infection and die. Oh my God, I'm going to die because of a hospital error. Like it's not that, but we're not seeing that in the news every day in a 24-hour news cycle. And people that are putting military on the streets telling us to stay at home. I mean, that's what we're facing. And if we talk about those statistics, I always hear, this is contagious and car accidents aren't. Or I'm like, well, but hospital-acquired infections are. That's 99,000. That's a lot. That's a lot. But it's kind of part of life. And, we live longer now, too.
Right. Well, see, that's the thing is, another thing that bothers me is just you don't care about people. You want people to die from coronavirus. Or one of the main things is you're not taking it seriously. No, you can take something seriously while also understanding that there is a bigger picture that needs to be addressed. Now, if you wanted to say this back in March, okay. April, maybe. May, okay. We're halfway through July. So what is the solution? And if the solution is we're going to shut down until we have a vaccine, which not everyone's going to line up to get that, or an eradication, let's just be honest about it then. Because you're going to see a revolt. People are not going to look over their shoulder and live like this in the United States of America.
No, that's what I'm saying about 6 months. I agree. We're going to see a revolt if it keeps going this way. And I've been thinking for a while we're going to have protests and riots all the way up to the election. There's so much division going on in the country, and I'd just like to find actual solutions, though, non-polarizing solutions. Like, how do we build a bridge? How do we get people to unite and come together?
Well, I think that was one of the things that bothered me so much about the protests that, let's be honest, primarily turned into riots. They were a protest during the day, and then at night they turned into a riot. Yeah. All those people didn't go home and exchange for other people.
The first
a lot of
one
those
here
people
was like that. The second one,
well, Nashville, we were lucky in Nashville. Yeah. Other places around the country, not so much.
Sure.
So to say that those were we just had so many peaceful protesters, and then all of a sudden, out of the woodwork came rioters. No, it just got dark outside, and people got more bold. Let's just be honest about it. Nashville, we were lucky; we only had one night of true destruction. But elsewhere around the country, even in Texas, that wasn't the case. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing it still in New York. We're seeing it in Brooklyn. We're seeing our police officers being kicked, and we're seeing people shooting fireworks at homeless people. And we're seeing just chaos. But that's one other thing that bothered me so much when all this started breaking out was we were just starting to reopen. There was an optimism among Americans because that was right when the reopening was really happening, not just in Nashville, but around the country. Things were reopening. Even New York was reopening. So it was like we could all come together, and I'm able to open my business. You're able to open your business. You're able to go back to work. I'm able to go back to work. It should have been this feeling of we're finally being able to go out and interact with each other again and go to a restaurant. And then this happens. And people I hate police, defund the police. I hate white people. All of a sudden, it's burn, loot, destroy, ravage, when it should have been such a time of us coming together and being like, this would have been good for all of us. And then the narrative flipped. And then we took a coronavirus hiatus for about 3.5 weeks, and then it came back.
Yeah, we did take a corona. That was so weird, right?
Nobody talked about it anymore. All of a sudden, it didn't matter.
It just disappeared. Let's see. So I wanted to ask you this, 21 to 27. It was an interesting time in my life. I ended up getting locked up. I got out. I opened my businesses. I made a comeback, redemption, all those things. Through that process, it was 21 to 27. Really, 20 to 27 was my biggest learning years. At 21, you were going at it, right? You had your thing you were doing. People were like, "Oh my gosh, who is this? What's going on?" All this stuff. It was going viral per se. Now at 27, what have you learned over those years? And maybe, I don't say have you changed, but what are the big learning situations that you've had, and how has it kind of made you into what you are today?
Well, going from where I was in my first network, One America, that's when I was 21, just started, and then things, the viral and all that was great. I wasn't expecting any of that. I was just doing my thing. I did a daily show, 1 hour show every day. That's Final Thoughts went viral, and then that's where I ended up at the Blaze. And that was 2016 election. I was the only Trump supporter in the building. I'm in a conservative news network, and I was the only Trump supporter in the building. Everyone else hated Donald Trump. I was really the black sheep because I was a Trump supporter. Trump won the election. I was like at my highest point. I mean, Trump had just won that election. I felt like I really had somewhat to do with that, my videos. I mean, the president called me and thanked me for my videos, so I really felt like I could take a personal stake in that success, and I was so at the top. And then that's when The View happened, and the firing happened, and the lawsuit happened, and I just got dropped completely on my ass. Just everything pulled out from underneath of me, and I'm sitting there at 24, going through a lawsuit, hemorrhaging hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees at 24 years old. I mean, it was a lot, but I weathered that storm, and then it was on to the next, and there's going to be a lot more storms. But for me, the biggest thing I've learned, and watching a lot of people try to do what I do, a lot of people really understanding that there is money to be made in conservative media and saying things that they don't necessarily believe in, but saying it because they realize that there's money to be made in conservative media, and watching people fade in and fade out for that reason. For me, the biggest thing I've learned is just stay true to what you believe in. Don't say it if you don't mean it. If you do something wrong that you are truly apologetic for, apologize for it, and just keep trucking along. Because this industry is a gnarly industry. I know that you know that, but media is a gnarly industry to be in. It's gnarly to be in political media. It's hard sometimes when I have to go out and have people say nasty things to me. California, Nashville, doesn't really matter where I am. Inevitably, there'll be an encounter. But for me, it's just stay the course, remember who you are. And I've also learned that most people can't be trusted, which is an unfortunate lesson you have to learn. But for me, coming from South Dakota, I was naive in a sense that I did think that I had a pretty good gauge on people, and I thought that most people could be trusted, that I allowed to be close to me. And it really quickly, I learned through managers, agents, whatever, no, you can't be trusted. Keep your circle really small and trust very few.
Interesting. Yeah, the trust thing, I hope that you can change your mind on that one too, because I actually think most people can be trusted.
But not in this industry.
Not in the industry.
People. I've met a
Sure,
lot of really,
gotcha.
really great people. But in this industry, in media,
Sure, that makes sense.
there are very few people that are around because they really are cheering for you. They're either there for the come up, or they're waiting for the fall down, and they're ready to crush you. And that's, they want their quick money when they can get it, or they want to use you to, they want to be, you're the horse that they ride in on. And I've learned that.
To me, trust is everything. It's how
Trust and loyalty.
build relationships through trust. And it is easy though. I mean, in the whole fight world, I felt like that for a while. I mean, I was pretty young when I did everything. Retired at 30, and I was a little jaded when I was done. I was like, and then I went and really started working on myself mentally and doing some other things spiritually. But I'm at a point now where I'm very trusting, and I think I give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm not just going to trust you with all my stuff, but I think being open to that possibility is super important. I can see in the media when they take personal things, and you're like, oh wait, I trusted you with that personal part of my life, and you just
Right.
That's not cool ever. Karma's a bitch.
Oh yeah.
Come back and
It
get
always comes back around. I put my first book out last year. It's like a year exactly, but the next one, I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot in especially this last year of my life.
That's cool.
But it's a great time to be, and I'm so happy to be in Nashville. I really feel like this is a great spot. And the thing that bothers me is people think when I speak negatively about the leaders in Nashville or things I don't like about the leadership or the policy, people are like, well, we don't love Nashville. No, I see such a bright spot in Nashville. And I just don't want people to let it be mucked up by Californians, to be quite honest. Californians and New Yorkers and everyone else who's coming here. I do have a love for the city. I'm not from here. I haven't been here that long. but I'm never going to go anywhere and be a blissfully ignorant resident citizen voter. Anywhere I go, I have love enough for the place that I'm in to speak about it.
What's, next 10 years, like where do you see yourself and how can you make the biggest impact?
I think what has always been my best weapon in the arsenal has just been that I'm authentic and I'm brutally genuine, whether you like it or not. So in the next 10 years, just really want to be in a space where that can just continue to be fostered and nobody tells me, no, you can't say that. No, it's great to have advice and it's great to have criticism and it's great to have all those things. But when people tell you not to say things or not to do things it's like something you got to take a pause. And I've learned to do that better. Think before you speak. Be careful what you tweet. I've learned all those things. But in the next 10 years, I think we're in such a great spot in media right now where authenticity is being valued more than it ever has. So I just want to be a part of that and continue that. And I think digital is so exciting right now. And I think giving people voice that otherwise would have never had a voice and had to come up through journalism school, which I did go through. But it's great that people that just have an authentic voice now are valued for what they bring to the table. I was really happy to be one of the first ones, at least in conservative media, that was able to take advantage of that. So I just want that to grow.
Tomi Lahren, thanks for coming on the Nashville Current podcast.
We're going to keep fighting for Nashville.
There you go.
I'll tell you that because we believe in Nashville.
That's right. That's right. Peace.